Christine Smith, and I'll be launching off our IUP presentation for a unit on the Renaissance. Obviously, the Renaissance is going to be heavily connected into the discipline of social studies, and that's where we're going to begin today. In the social studies unit, we will begin with talking about what is a Renaissance? What does that mean? Focusing on the idea of a rebirth. The first activity that will be taking place is the planning of a way to bring a rebirth or a re-energizing to the classroom. Usually, this Renaissance unit is going to fall towards the end of the school year, a time when students and teachers are feeling the wane of the school year on them. So I always like to start this unit with a party and a way for the students to actually get involved in planning their own Renaissance, their own rebirth, and their own recommitment to knowledge and the pursuit of excellence within our classroom. We'll also spend that first day just going over some important vocabulary. The students will be making a foldable. The next day, we really dive into content, and I will be presenting 4 topics that are basically the standards laid out into chunks so that the students will begin to think about which standard is most interesting to them, and they will be challenged with making an iMovie trailer that will accurately and fully explain and express what is going on in that standard. For instance, that first standard of just looking at the cultural and economic situation in Italy that led to the Renaissance, the students will be investigating that. They'll be able to use their phones, they'll be able to use their computers, they'll be able to get on Google, use classroom resources and the textbook to begin to get some information and decide which topic they will choose. They will sign up for that. I will group them heterogeneously and make myself available to them to give them the support on the technology side as they begin to use iMovie in the classroom. We will move from there into looking at PowerPoint presentations, using worksheets on the Renaissance as we begin to really analyze the writings of Machiavelli and the Prince and the development of the city-states there in Italy with the rise of Florence and Venice. We'll also be taking a look at the art and literature of the day, considering very specifically Leonardo da Vinci and his inventions as well as his artwork, the artwork of Michelangelo, as well as the writings of Petrarch and the rise of humanism. We will look at that through class discussion as well as class work. The students will all throughout this time continue to be working on their iMovie presentations. Those will go on throughout the unit and will actually take the last 2 days of class to watch those and begin to critique those. One of the other really exciting aspects of this unit is I will be planning a museum experience for the students. So they'll be leaving the classroom, heading to the library. There they will interact at different centers. They'll be interacting with art, they'll be interacting with literature, they'll be interacting with maps. They will be analyzing, comparing and contrasting the content and the events of the Renaissance to that of the Middle Ages that they had just completed. They'll be looking at the geographical challenges and advantages of the Renaissance. Then on that last really big work day, they're going to be looking at the difference between the Northern Renaissance and the Italian Renaissance, really looking at those reformers, looking at Martin Luther, looking at some of the other important writers of the day and those that were looking to reform the church, because the church is one of the mainstays of life during the Middle Ages and the Renaissance time period. So we will be taking a deeper look at those things. Then on that last few days of class, before the unit ends, they'll be looking at those iMovie trailers, using the technology, getting feedback from myself, as well as critiquing each other and deciding, was my work accurate? Where could I have done better? Throughout this unit, we will be committed to those themes that the National Council on Social Studies lays out, the themes of culture, people, individuals, places, environments, looking at the rise of institutions. So we will stay committed to those themes. We'll also be using the social science standards for the state of Virginia, focusing in on map skills, looking back at maps that the students will have created during their Middle Ages unit. It's going to really emphasize the value of their own work as well as the usefulness and the importance of being able to use maps. They'll be looking at charts and diagrams as well as using their literacy skills. It's going to be very important throughout this unit that we work interdisciplinarily because the Renaissance is a time period where writing is very important. The students need to have good critical thinking skills, high comprehension levels. They're looking at technologies, they're looking at development in science. Really, the bedrock of that discipline is laid during this time period. So it'll be a really exciting time to see the students moving from classroom to classroom, teacher to teacher, but continuing to interact with the same ideas and concepts of the Renaissance time period. Now it is time for me to pass the baton to my partner, Dylan, who will be focusing in on the science aspect of this Renaissance unit.
Thank you, Christine, and great work. It has been a pleasure working with you all. Hello, everyone. I'm Dylan Augenreich, and I will be presenting my life science interdisciplinary lesson for this 7th grade unit that focuses on the Renaissance period, its events, and its theories. People often think of the Renaissance as a time period of social and personal exploration, but it also played a large role in the development of modern theories and practices in the field of science. The way we process a scientific problem, pose a hypothesis, and critically think about the world around us are all ideologies that came from the great minds of the Renaissance, which is also considered as the scientific revolution period due to its great strides in the field of math and science. This interdisciplinary unit will focus on integrating these events of the Renaissance into the curriculum for my life science classroom, therefore reinforcing and expanding upon curriculum from across the entire grade level. The Life Science SOLs addressed in this unit will be Virginia SOL Life Science 1, which focuses on demonstrating an understanding of scientific reasoning, logic, and the nature of science by planning and conducting investigations. Another SOL that will be covered towards the end of the 10-day unit plan, but not necessarily covered in this lesson, is Virginia SOL Life Science 2, which says that the student will investigate and understand that all living things are composed of cells. The underlying character principle that this unit will aim to address is the spirit of inquiry, exploration, individuality, and creativity. As seen in Exodus 35:31 through 32, He has filled him with the Spirit of God, with skill, with intelligence, with knowledge, and with all craftsmanship, to devise artistic designs, to work in gold and silver and bronze. In these words, one can see that humans possess the necessary skills and intelligence to accomplish feats in science and art. But individually, one must obtain the will and spirit of inquiry and exploration in order to accomplish those feats. One activity that my class will participate in at the very beginning of this unit will be a research matching exercise of the famous scientists of the scientific revolution and their associated contributions to science. Used as an opening activity, this is not only a great way to introduce the scientific method and its creative process, it also reaches into social studies and history curriculum to cover the scientific revolution and its key contributors. Students will use computers or tablets to research the information required in order to match a scientist to their distinctive contribution. Then the results will be compared aloud with the class to make sure everybody's on the same page. Another skill that will be addressed with this activity is the use of technology for research, as the students will be simultaneously exercising the above-mentioned character trait of the spirit of inquiry as they explore the World Wide Web and the information that comes along with it. Another activity that students will participate in within this unit is a writing assignment meant to enhance students' English and language arts skills, as well as to enhance students' knowledge about the scientific process and the process of experimentation, data keeping, and analyzing these given results. This 1 to 2 page written assignment will require more in-depth individual research on the part of the students by requiring them to research an experiment conducted by one of these Renaissance scientists mentioned above and describe how they used the scientific process and data keeping to verify their contributions to science. This not only gets the student thinking about these famous scientists, but it also helps them connect it back to how they came about with these results and through the experiments, how they came up with these results. One of the objectives that will be fulfilled through the activities mentioned above is that when given a bag containing labeled pieces of the different steps of the scientific process, students will be able to list them in chronological order from beginning to end of the process with 100% accuracy. This information will be learned through the research activities mentioned above, as well as other more life science specific lessons like in-class labs and others videos that address science specifically. Another specific objective that will be satisfied through these activities is that given data collection worksheets, students are able to observe and collect data from the above trials and enter onto their data tables with 85% accuracy. This information will be learned and collected through in-class lab experiments that focus on the scientific process from the very beginning, with the posing of a problem, to the posing of a hypothesis, to testing it, to the analysis of the solution. The mindset and process of scientific inquiry set forth in the Renaissance period sets the foundation for the scientific achievements that we see today. Life is full of problems that need solving, and what better way to start than by using the scientific method? Thank you everyone for your time as I pass it along to my classmate Toni.
Thank you, Christine, and hello, 7th graders. My name is Toni Langella, and I specialize in English. And today I'm going to be teaching you all about grammar by having you write a 4-page paper. Now, before you moan and groan, this paper is going to be fun. Because since this unit revolves around the Renaissance era, I'm going to have you write about Hamlet and the Lion King. Why? Because did you know that Hamlet was actually the main source of inspiration for the Lion King? I mean, think about it. Simba is a young prince whose father was killed by their uncle, and we get to see the psychological turmoil that this had on our young prince. The only difference is that Simba's story had a happy ending. Now, without further ado, let's get into the state standards and how I'm going to have you write this bad boy. SOL 7.5a. Describe the elements of narrative structure, including setting, character development, plot structure, theme, and conflict. Now, obviously, you're going to have to watch both The Lion King and The Hamlet and understand the stories and how all those aforementioned literary elements were present and executed in both of those stories if you're going to write a paper about it. Compare and contrast various forms of genres of fictional text. Obviously, you're going to have to know the differences and similarities between The Lion King and Hamlet if you wish to write a paper about it. For example, you need to know that Scar is like Hamlet's uncle since they both killed their father's brothers for power, and Simba is the young prince who is grieving the death of his father and is dealing with it. The 7.1a. Communicate ideas and information orally in an organized and sufficient manner. What I mean by this is that every other day I'm going to have you participate in a writer's workshop because I know you guys love to talk among your peers, and I figured that this would make it more fun for you guys. Now, every night I'm going to have you write a little bit, and then you guys will bring your work into class the next day and receive feedback from 4 of your peers. And then on the days where you don't have an in-class personal assignment, you guys are going to write a little bit in class and then post it on a discussion board. And then you have to edit your papers in accordance to the feedback that you receive from your classmates. Ask probing questions to seek elaboration and clarification of ideas, which is State Standard 7.1b. Of course, when you do writer's workshop, you're going to have to ask your classmates questions about, like, why do you think this way? What about here? What are you going to do about this idea? This can help to lead to further development ideas and overall improving of your content. And since I am doing grammar, I am also going to subject you guys to State Standard 7.7. The student will write in a variety of forms with an emphasis on exposition, narration, and persuasion. This essay is going to be expository in nature because you're going to have to describe the differences and similarities of The Lion King and Hamlet. And it's going to have a topic sentence, multiple paragraphs, and have school-appropriate language and be catered towards in a professional environment. And on the very first day that this project is introduced, I'm going to give you a whole grammar lesson about grammar and a graphic organizer where you can organize all your ideas. And this will be typed around on the computer. You will also be subjected to various drafts because you're going to receive various feedback from your classmates and revise in accordance to the feedback that you receive. The last standard is 7.8. The student will edit writing for correct grammar, capitalization, punctuation, spelling, sentence structure, and paraphrasing. The reason why I chose this standard is because obviously I'm here to teach you about grammar. And so, because of this standard, like I said, you're going to receive a grammar lesson on the very first day this project is introduced. You're going to receive a graphic organizer to organize your thoughts. And then as you proceed with the writing process, you're going to have to make sure your prose has appropriate spelling, appropriate uses of comma, appropriate as the subject-verb agreement, appropriate pronoun antecedent agreement, and a good use of 8 parts of speech, which are pronoun, adjective, adverb, pronoun, preposition, introduction, verb, and conjunction. And that's it, folks. That's how I'm going to use the Lion King and the Renaissance in order to help you understand grammar. Now, without further ado, I'm going to go pass the mic to Tabitha. Bye!
Thank you, Toni, for sharing how you're going to use the Renaissance to teach your students everything they need to know about English. My name is Tabitha Walks, and I will be focusing on the language arts side of this unit. Within 7th grade, there are standards focused on research, communication, reading, and writing. My main focus for this unit will be reading, being able to comprehend a variety of different texts, be it nonfiction, fiction, poetry, narrative, just texts that run the gamut of genres. I'll be using a lot of the Renaissance writers to develop those skills within my student. The Renaissance was such a huge time of change in the way people thought. There was a shift from kind of focusing on religion and everything that had to do with that to kind of humanism, and that was reflected in their writing. And so we're going to kind of focus a little bit on kind of an essential question of how history affects one's writing, how our experiences affect what we write about. A lot of the nonfiction writings that we'll be focusing on will be potential articles from Langella I plan on doing that talk about the history of the Renaissance, which should tie directly in with what Christine is teaching them within the social studies unit. So that'll be a nice crossover. They'll be able to learn how to read these articles, kind of like reading a history book on what the Renaissance is, and then we will learn how to apply that to, you know, an author's theme within their writing. So specifically in the standard, the students will be able to understand the elements of literature, figurative language. We'll have a poetry unit where we'll focus a lot on literary devices and how they're used within specifically poetry, but then we'll also see how they're used in a ton of different things today that a lot of times, you know, students, especially in 7th grade, might not see, such as songs. That's my poetry unit. We'll start off introducing poetry with how we see it a lot in songs, and they'll be able to pick out their favorite songs and be able to apply the knowledge that they're learning to find those devices within those songs, and then they'll also be able to apply it to finding those devices within poems that we're focusing on. From the poetry side of things, I'll grab from the English Renaissance, a lot of Shakespeare, Philip Sidney. They'll be developing their ability to compare and contrast themes within poems or structures of poems. We'll focus on some fun poems of today, Edgar Allan Poe, Shel Silverstein, and then we'll also pull in a lot of the Renaissance writers. And again, that essential question, how does history and experience affect what you're writing about? So we'll look at that a lot. So reading will be my main standard. I will also within my unit work on some of the research standards. The students are going to be able to use reference materials on the internet, from the library, from a variety of different sources, be able to organize that all together into a presentation that they then can present to this to the rest of their class. For this part of my unit, I kind of planned a fun project, kind of like a speed dating Renaissance main character project. Each student will choose a major character from the Renaissance. I'll have a list provided for them to choose from. They have to do their research, collect it, organize it, be able to cite it properly, and then be able to present it and communicate it clearly. And then it'll be like a speed dating thing, you know, like we'll have them kind of introduce themselves as this person, and it'll be kind of a fun project, which will allow me to see how well they're able to meet those standards. Within those, though, I will be focusing on the reading standards, you know, highlighting, you know, critical reading and being able to comprehend what you're reading. Even though my main focus will be research, I'm still going to tie in that reading because that's the one I'm carrying all the way through. I have focusing on like kind of media and communication as well at the end of my unit. We're going to be focusing on some of Shakespeare's plays, kind of fun, reading those, which again ties in the reading standards that I'll be working throughout. But I will also develop the students' ability to listen actively, which is in their communication, speaking, listening standard area. Because in reading plays, we'll assign characters, and then we'll, again, just use some of the standards of readings to tie that in as well. Overall, I think my main goal with using the Renaissance to tie in my standards is using the bigger picture of the Renaissance, the desire to think critically and ask questions, and to not just sit back and be told the answers, but to, you know, argue and defend until you come to an answer that you're okay with. I'm going to focus a lot on those and help my students also develop the Renaissance mindset of exploration and discovery. And then we're going to use the Renaissance characters to do those. We'll use their writings, their poetry, their fiction, their nonfiction, all of that to develop those standards. And so it should be a fun time. I am excited to use the Renaissance to teach and to tie in with my fellow teachers, and help them also, you know, plug home their standards and develop understanding. And this is going to be hopefully a fun, I shouldn't say hopefully, this is going to be a very fun unit to pull forth, and the students will be excited if we're excited. So we're excited.